Rain lashed the plexiglass roof of the bus shelter, turning the evening into a gray, watery smear. But the creature huddled beneath it wasn't waiting for the number 17. Her blue eyes, luminous even in the gloom, were fixed with unnerving intensity. Down the rain-slicked street, past the blurry headlights and the hunched figures rushing home, every muscle in her thin, mud-streaked Siamese frame was taut, ears pricked forward, ignoring the violent shivers that racked her body. She wasn't just wet. She was waiting. And she'd been waiting, Sarah realized with a jolt that stopped her own hurried steps, every single evening for the past 2 weeks. Sarah pressed a hand against the cold glass of the laundromat window, her breath fogging a small circle. The sight of the cat, a ghost of elegance despite her bedraggled state, triggered a familiar ache. She'd noticed the pattern, the elegant pointed face peering from the shelter precisely at 5:45 p.m. as the commuter rush began to thin. The cat would remain, statue still, until long after the streetlights buzzed to life, scanning every car, every pedestrian with a hope that seemed to dim a little more each night as darkness fully claimed the street. Then, only then, would she vanish into the dripping alleyways. Tonight, the rain was colder, harder. The cat looked impossibly small, a fragile vessel adrift on a concrete island. Sarah felt the familiar pull, the one that always tangled with, the sensible voice reminding her she lived in a tiny apartment with a no-pets clause thicker than her lease. But the cat's silent vigil, a devotion etched in rainwater and trembling fur, felt like a plea Sarah couldn't ignore. Not tonight. Pushing open the laundromat door, the warm, humid air thick with the scent of detergent momentarily disoriented her. She shook her head, focusing. She needed dry towels, something absorbent. The elderly woman folding sheets nearby glanced up. "That poor thing out there again?" she murmured, nodding towards the shelter visible through the steamed window. "Breaks your heart, doesn't it? Like clockwork, rain or shine." Sarah nodded, grabbing a stack of thin, clean towels from her basket. "Do you know anything about her? Who she might be waiting for?" The woman sighed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Saw her first, maybe? 3 months back? Looked better then. Sleek. With a gentleman, older fellow. He'd sit right there with her, sharing a sandwich, talking, softly. Always the same time? Then, he just stopped coming." She paused, her gaze distant. She started showing up alone a week later, waiting, like she still expects him. The words hung heavy in the damp air. Abandonment. Loyalty misplaced. Sarah's resolve solidified. 3 months. How long could a delicate creature survive the streets, anchored by nothing but fading memory? Wrapping the towels under her coat, Sarah braced herself against the renewed downpour. The wind snatched her breath away. The bus shelter seemed farther now, the cat a smudge of cream and shadow against the darkening gray. As Sarah approached, moving slowly, deliberately non-threatening, the Siamese finally shifted her gaze. Those piercing blue eyes locked onto Sarah. Not with fear initially, but with a profound, weary assessment. Sarah knelt on the wet pavement a few feet away, ignoring the cold seep through her jeans. She extended a hand, palm down, low and slow. "Hello, beautiful," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the drumming rain. "You look cold. So cold." The cat didn't retreat, but neither did she relax. Her gaze flickered back to the street for a split second, then returned to Sarah, wary. A low, rumbling sound started deep in the cat's chest. Not a growl, not quite. A vibration of profound unease, of grief held too long. Sarah gently unfolded a towel, laying it just inside the shelter, out of the worst spray. "Just a dry spot," she coaxed, "just for a little while." The cat stared at the towel, then back at Sarah. Her nostrils flared, testing the air. Slowly, with the stiff dignity of the deeply wary, she took one step, then another. Her wet fur clung to her ribs, revealing the sharp angles beneath. She paused inches from the towel, her intense gaze never leaving Sarah's face. It felt like an interrogation. "Who are you? Why are you here? He is the one I wait for." Sarah held her breath, her hand still outstretched, rain dripping from her, fingertips. The moment stretched, taut and fragile. Would she accept this small comfort? Or was her trust buried too deep, reserved only for the ghost who never came? The cat lowered her head slightly, sniffing the terry cloth. Her tail, waterlogged and thin, gave a single hesitant twitch. Was it acceptance? A tiny crack in the fortress of her solitude? Suddenly, a delivery van roared past, far too close, spraying a filthy arc of water that drenched the sidewalk and spattered the shelter. The cat exploded backwards with a sharp yowl, a sound of pure terror. She scrambled, claws scraping desperately on the wet concrete, and bolted. Not into the relative safety of the alley she usually used, but straight across the street, towards the flickering neon sign of the closed hardware store. "No! Wait!" Sarah cried, lurching forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. Brakes screeched. A car swerved violently, horn blaring, missing the streaking feline by inches. Sarah froze, paralyzed by the near miss, watching the cat disappear into the dark, narrow passageway between the hardware store and a boarded-up bakery. Gone. Just like that. The towel lay abandoned, already darkening with rain. Sarah slumped against the shelter pole, gasping, the icy fear mixing with the rain soaking her skin. She'd scared her. She'd driven her into danger. Was she hurt? Where did that alley lead? The image of those terrified blue eyes haunted her. The waiting was over, replaced by blind panic. And Sarah had caused it. Driven by a surge of guilt and fear sharper than the cold, Sarah sprinted across the street, heedless of traffic, earning another angry horn blast. She skidded to a stop at the mouth of the alley. It was narrower than... It looked from the street, choked with overflowing dumpsters reeking of spoiled food and damp cardboard. Puddles reflected the sickly yellow glow of a distant security light. Darkness swallowed the far end. "Hello?" Sarah called, her voice echoing strangely off the brick walls. "Sweetheart? It's okay. I'm sorry. Please, just let me see you." Silence answered her, broken only by the relentless drumming of rain on metal and the frantic dripping from a broken gutter. She pulled out her phone, fumbling with wet fingers to activate the flashlight. The beam cut a shaky path through the gloom, illuminating puddles, discarded wrappers, and the scuttling shadow of a rat. No cat. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Where was she? Was she cowering, injured, behind one of these rancid dumpsters? Or had she fled deeper into the maze of back streets? Then, a sound. Faint, muffled. Not a meow, but a choked, gurgling cough. It came from the left, near a particularly large dumpster leaning precariously against the bakery wall. Sarah swung the light. Nothing. She took a cautious step forward, the beam probing the deep shadows behind the dumpster. "Please," she whispered, the plea swallowed by the rain. Another cough, weaker this time. Sarah edged closer, the stench of decay almost overwhelming. She angled the light downwards, behind the dumpster's rusted wheel, and there, huddled in a shallow depression filled with oily water, was the cat. She was trembling violently, her fur plastered flat, making her look even smaller, more skeletal. Her beautiful blue eyes were wide with terror and pain, reflecting the phone's harsh light. But worse, much worse, was the dark, viscous stain spreading around her hind leg, swirling in the filthy water. Blood. A lot of it. She must have caught herself on something sharp during her panicked flight. Jagged metal, broken glass. Her gaze met Sarah's, filled with an agony that mirrored the frantic pounding of Sarah's own heart. Trapped, bleeding, terrified. The rain hammered down, turning the alley into a cold, dark river. Sarah stood frozen, the beam of her phone shaking violently in her hand. How could she get to her without causing more panic, more injury? How could she stop the bleeding? The cat was wedged deep in that filthy corner, the dumpster looming like a threat above her. One wrong move. The blood kept swirling, a dark bloom against the greasy water. Time was leaking away, just like the life from this fragile creature who had waited so faithfully, only to find this. Could Sarah reach her? In time? Or was the vigil finally tragically over? The beam of Sarah's phone trembled violently, spotlighting the nightmare tableau. The Siamese cat was a crumpled shadow against the grimy brick, the dark stain around her hind legs spreading like ink in the filthy water. Her breaths came in shallow, ragged hitches, each one punctuated by a faint, wet gurgle. Those mesmerizing blue eyes, wide with terror and pain, locked onto Sarah's, reflecting the harsh light like fractured sapphires. The rain drummed a relentless, cold rhythm on the dumpster lid, each drop echoing the frantic pounding of Sarah's heart. Trapped, bleeding, terrified, the words screamed in her mind. Time wasn't just leaking, it was hemorrhaging. "Shh, sweetheart, shh," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with tears she wouldn't let fall. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. She dropped to her knees in the oily muck, ignoring the cold seeping through her clothes. Slowly, slowly, she extended her empty hand, palm down, towards the cat, keeping the light beam steady, but angled slightly away from those terrified eyes. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. I just want to help." The cat flinched, a low, pained whine escaping her throat. Her body tensed, ready to bolt again, but the injured leg buckled under the strain. A fresh wave of agony contorted her delicate features. Sarah saw it, the flicker of absolute helplessness beneath the fear. "You can't run," Sarah murmured, her voice breaking. "Please let me help." Taking a shallow breath, Sarah inched closer. The stench of decay and wet fur filled her nostrils. She could see the wound now. A deep, jagged gash high on the cat's hindquarter, pulsing dark red against the soaked cream fur. It looked vicious, possibly catching on sharp, rusted metal during her panicked scramble. Every instinct screamed to grab the cat, but Sarah knew one sudden move could send her fleeing deeper into the alley, bleeding out in the darkness. She needed trust, now. With agonizing slowness, Sarah lowered her hand until her fingertips were just inches from the cat's trembling head. She held her breath. The cat stared, pupils dilated to black pools. A tremor ran through her thin frame. Then, impossibly, the cat leaned forward just a fraction of an inch and pressed her wet, cold forehead against Sarah's fingertips. It was a gesture of utter exhaustion, of surrender, a silent plea. The dam holding Sarah's tears broke. Connection. First bond. "Okay, beautiful, okay," Sarah choked out, gently stroking the space between the cat's ears. "We're getting out of here." She shrugged out of her rain-soaked coat, ignoring the icy deluge hitting her back. Moving with deliberate calm, she bundled the lightweight fabric, creating a makeshift stretcher. "This might hurt, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." She carefully slid her hands under the cat's fragile body, avoiding the injured leg. The cat tensed, a sharp hiss escaping her, but she didn't struggle, didn't bite. Her eyes remained fixed on Sarah's face, trusting, pleading. Sarah lifted her, cradling the shivering, bleeding bundle against her chest. The cat felt terrifyingly light, bones sharp beneath the wet fur. Sarah wrapped the coat snugly around her, creating a cocoon, trying to shield her from the rain and the sight of the blood. "Hold on," she whispered fiercely. "Just hold on." The dash to her car parked a block away was a blur of rain-slicked pavement, pounding heartbeats and whispered pleas. The cat remained unnervingly still in her arms, only the rapid flutter of her heartbeat against Sarah's own chest betraying her terror. Getting into the car, Sarah fumbled with the keys, her hands numb with cold and fear. She laid the bundled cat gently on the passenger seat, cranking the heat to maximum. The cat's eyes were half closed now, her breathing worryingly shallow. "Stay with me," Sarah begged, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Emergency vet. Her fingers slipped on the wet screen. Where was the closest one? Panic threatened to engulf her. The cat let out another weak, gurgling cough. No time. Sarah remembered a sign near the highway. She slammed the car into gear, tires screeching on the wet asphalt. The drive was a nightmare of stoplights that felt eternal and winding streets that seemed to stretch into oblivion. Rain lashed the windshield, blurring the world. Sarah kept one hand on the bundled coat, feeling the faint rise and fall of the cat's chest. "Talk to me, beautiful," Sarah urged, her voice trembling. "Tell me about the man you waited for. Was he kind? Did he share his sandwiches? Did he call you something special?" She rambled, nonsense and comfort spilling out, needing to fill the terrifying silence to keep the fragile spark of life beside her awake. The cat didn't move, but her ear twitched slightly toward Sarah's voice. Second bond. Shared fear. Shared journey. Finally, the bright, sterile lights of the 24-hour animal hospital glared through the rain. Sarah burst through the doors, clutching the bundled coat. "Help! Please! She's bleeding badly! Hit something in an alley!" The receptionist took one look and buzzed them straight back. A vet tech materialized, gently but swiftly taking the bundle from Sarah's trembling arms onto a stainless steel table. Unwrapping the coat revealed the full horror. The deep gash, the mud and oil matting the fur, the alarming pallor beneath the Siamese points. The cat lay limp, eyes glazed, barely responsive. A young vet, her face grimly focused, assessed the wound. Deep laceration, possible tendon damage, significant blood loss. "We need to stabilize her, get an IV in, and prep for surgery. Now." She rattled off instructions to the tech. Sarah stood frozen, watching them work with terrifying efficiency. Clipping fur, cleaning the wound, inserting an IV catheter into a tiny vein. The cat flinched weakly but offered no resistance, her energy utterly spent. The vet glanced at Sarah. "You did good getting her here so fast, but it's touch and go. We need to operate immediately. Sign here." She thrust a clipboard with consent. Forms at Sarah. The words swam before her eyes. Risks. Anesthesia, blood loss, infection, amputation, death. Sarah's hand shook violently as she signed. Amputation? Death? The cat who waited so faithfully. Could it end like this? Hours crawled by in the harshly lit, antiseptic-scented waiting room. Sarah paced, sat, paced again, her rain-soaked clothes chilling her to the bone. Images flashed. The cat's intense gaze fixed down the street, the terrified bolt across traffic, the trusting press of her forehead, the dark blood swirling in the filthy water, guilt warred with desperate hope. Had she caused this by trying to help? Would the cat survive the surgery? Would she lose her leg? What if she woke up only to find another stranger, not the one she longed for? The uncertainty was a physical ache. Finally, the operating room doors swung open. The young vet emerged, her scrubs stained, but a small smile touched her tired eyes. Sarah shot to her feet, heart in her throat. "She made it through surgery," the vet said, relief softening her voice. "It was deep, nicked a tendon, but we repaired it. She'll need careful recovery, but she should keep the leg. Lost a lot of blood, so she's weak, but she's stable. A fighter, this one." Sarah sagged against the wall, tears of pure relief streaming down her face. "Can I see her?" In the recovery area, the Siamese lay on soft blankets in a heated cage, a bandage wrapped around her hind leg, an IV line taped to her front paw. She looked impossibly small and fragile, but her chest rose and fell steadily. Her eyes were half open, hazy from the anesthesia. As Sarah approached quietly, those blue eyes slowly focused. Recognition flickered. Not fear, not wariness. A profound, exhausted acknowledgement. Sarah knelt beside the cage, reaching a finger gently through the bars, to stroke the fur between her ears. The cat didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her head ever so slightly into the touch, a faint, almost inaudible purr rumbling deep in her chest. It was the sound of survival, of pain receding, of an instinctive response to comfort offered. Third bond. Relief, acceptance, the beginning of trust. Bringing her home was the next challenge. Sarah's no-pets apartment suddenly seemed like a fortress to storm. She named her Luna, for the luminous blue eyes that had first captured her attention in the rainy dusk. The first few days were a delicate dance. Luna was weak, wary, confused. She hid under Sarah's bed, emerging only for food, water, and cautious litter box use, her bandaged leg dragging slightly. Sarah sat on the floor for hours, reading aloud softly, letting Luna get used to her presence, her scent. Slowly, tentatively, Luna began to venture out. She'd sit at the edge of the living room rug, watching Sarah with those intense eyes, still holding a world of mystery. The vet visits continued, checking the healing leg, removing stitches. Each time Luna allowed Sarah to gently lift her into the carrier, a little more trust was forged. One quiet afternoon, as weak sunlight streamed through the window, Luna limped cautiously towards Sarah, who sat reading on the sofa. She paused, then, with a decisive little hop that made Sarah hold her breath, landed softly on the cushion beside her. She didn't curl up immediately, but sat upright, regal despite the fading bandage, gazing out the window. Not at the street below with desperate intensity, but at the sky, at a sparrow hopping on the fire escape. Sarah remained perfectly still, her breath catching. Then, slowly, Luna turned her head. She looked directly into Sarah's eyes, a long, searching gaze. It felt like a question being asked and answered. Hesitantly, Sarah lifted her hand. Luna didn't flinch. Sarah gently stroked the silky fur along her back. Luna closed her eyes, leaned into the touch, and the purr started again. Stronger. This time, a resonant vibration of contentment that filled the quiet room. Bond solidified. Belonging. The mystery of Luna's vigil still lingered. During a careful grooming session, Sarah discovered a small, tarnished silver locket tangled deep in the fur around Luna's neck, nearly invisible. Her heart hammered as she carefully unhooked the delicate chain. It opened stiffly. Inside, on one side, was a tiny, faded photograph of an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. On the other side, an engraved inscription, "For my blue-eyed shadow, always, Arthur." Arthur. The name from the laundromat woman's story. Proof. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. She showed the locket to Luna, who sniffed it curiously, then butted her head against Sarah's hand, as if acknowledging a memory, but not one that caused pain anymore. Sarah later learned from a neighbor that Arthur, a retired librarian, had passed away peacefully in his sleep months ago, with no known family. Luna hadn't just been abandoned, she'd lost her person. Weeks turned into months. Luna's leg healed beautifully, leaving only the faintest hint of a limp when she ran. Her coat regained its sleek cream and seal point glory. The haunted look in her blue eyes gradually softened, replaced by a watchful intelligence and increasingly moments of pure, lazy contentment. She claimed sunbeams on the rug, batted at feather toys with surprising ferocity, and developed a fondness for sleeping draped across Sarah's keyboard while she worked. But her favorite spot remained the windowsill, not to watch the street below with desperate hope, but to observe the world, the dancing leaves, the visiting birds, the changing sky. The vigil was over. The watching now was simply living. One crisp autumn morning, Sarah found Luna on her windowsill perch, bathed in golden light. Below, the bus shelter stood empty. Luna wasn't looking down. Her gaze was fixed on a vibrant red cardinal singing in a nearby tree, her tail twitching with quiet interest. Sarah knelt beside her, resting her chin on the sill. Luna turned, blinked slowly at her, that ancient cat gesture of ultimate trust, and then gently bumped her head against Sarah's cheek. The purr that resonated through her small body was a deep, steady thrum of peace. Sarah wrapped an arm around her, feeling the warm weight, the soft fur, the living proof of resilience. The lonely Siamese who waited every day for someone who never came hadn't just been rescued. She hadn't just found safety. She had found a new kind of belonging, a love built not on replacing the past, but on honoring it while embracing the present. Her faithful heart, once anchored to loss, had finally found safe harbor. She was no longer a ghost waiting at a bus stop. She was Luna, home, her blue eyes reflecting not the empty street, but the quiet, enduring light of a love that had found her, precisely when she needed it most. Her waiting was over, replaced by the simple, profound contentment of being exactly where she was meant to be. She was home, not as a replacement, but as a new chapter written in the language of purrs and shared sunbeams, a testament that even the most faithful hearts, broken by loss, can learn to beat again in the warmth of a different, yet deeply true, kind of love.